And thanks everybody for jumping on the call and spending the next hour with us learning about software as a medical device, or SaMD. Research indicates that SaMD is continuing to increase usage across a broad range of technology platforms. Software as a medical device has become a game changer in the healthcare industry and is causing disruption in just about every aspect of the sector, including therapeutics, genomics, drug discovery, robotics, point of sale diagnostics, the list goes on and on. So today we have a group of thought leaders in the healthcare field that are going to talk through the details and dig into the details of this particular technology. With us, we have, you've already met Carson, who is the Director of Health Solutions for the U.S. Health and Life Sciences sector at Microsoft. We also have Sean Hamill, who you just met. He is a cloud solutions architect and part of the healthcare team delivering Azure solutions and services to that industry. We also have Yatin Dareshwar, who is the VP of Digital Services at YASH Technology and a subject matter expert in this area. And we also have Rajan Prakash, who is the head of the Healthcare and Life Sciences division at YASH Technologies. In terms of our agenda, we are going to be talking about a number of different subjects, including what is SaMD and how is it playing a role in the overall digital health and ecosystem. We're going to be talking about how we see software as a medical device bringing value to your end users and your end customers and patients. We will be discussing the critical components of software as a medical device from a technology perspective, and specifically, can SaMD be used? You can use the agile methodology for development of these solutions, as well as at a high level, what role we see technology leaders providing in developing SaMD as a product. And at a high level, we're also going to be discussing regional regulatory and compliance bodies and governing SaMD and how to wade through some of those waters. And then last but not least, how a partner like YASH as a technology service provider can support organizations developing SaMD solutions. So bit of housekeeping just real quick. We've already mentioned that it is going to be recorded. The session is going to be recorded. If you have questions, we strongly encourage questions. And we please use the chat function, which is the little bubble with the arrow next to it at the top right section, to put your questions in, and we will either address them as they come up or at the end of the session. And so without further ado, I think we'll go ahead and get started. And we're going to be started with Rajan. Rajan, can you talk a little bit about what software as a medical device really is and how it's playing a role in the overall digital health ecosystem?
Sure, Jeff. So in a very simple nutshell, software as a medical device is essentially any standalone software that can help patients and clinicians in some aspect of care and or management of the medical condition, right? Let me actually give you some examples. So think of a lot of imaging specialists, right? Like, so today you have radiology data coming from various kinds of machines like GE, Philips, and other players, right? And everybody might be pumping in data from their different devices, right? Hospitals providing various kinds of images and modalities coming in from various sources. And let's say there is a core group of imaging specialists. So they are taking data from different sources and identifying the images and anomalies associated with it, right? Like, so the job of a radiologist can actually be done to some extent by algorithms and more artificial intelligence solutions that are coming into the market, right? So such a solution, which is independent of any of the hardware associated, and it can operate in its own isolation, is considered software as a medical device, right? Let me also give you an example of what is not software as a medical device. Take an example of an echo machine, right? Echo machine, you have the hardware component and you also have a certain amount of software which is driving the hardware. So both these modules cannot exist in isolation of one another. So such a system is not considered software as a medical device, right? Like, So also maybe there are people from the pharma and biotech industry out over here. So for that purpose, let me give yet another example. So let's say you're a provider making diabetes solutions, maybe insulin, right? So to determine the exact insulin dosage for an individual, you actually need to be figuring in multiple factors. You need to understand what is the level of activity the individual had for the day, what is the amount of uh, diet intake, right? Like how much of carbs has he consumed for the day? And based on that, you have to feed it into an algorithm and determine what is the exact dosage of insulin needed for the individual. So something like that, an independent party taking solutions from multiple players, right? Like so Fitbit may be providing the activity levels. There may be a third party provider of diet who will be providing the calorific consumption as well as what is the amount of carbs in his diet, right? So you kind of put it together, create an algorithm and say, okay, what is the amount of insulin that needs to be administered to this specific individual based on his conditions and his specific activity levels and diet levels, right? So that is an example of software as a medical device, right? Like, and definitely various information bits which are in silos today, they are being brought together on a same platform, and such information together is making a better impact on patients and how clinicians are managing them. So in a nutshell, that is the goal of SaMD, right? Like, and I think a lot of advancements are happening in this area, and Gatin and Sean will be talking about that in shortly.
Okay. Fantastic. Thanks for that, getting us started with that, Rajan. We really appreciate it. Now we'll go to Carson here and kind of get his thoughts. Carson, how do you see software as a medical device bringing value for your end consumers, your patients, your customers, and how is it benefiting those clients, we'll call them, objectives towards product portfolio?
Love the question, Jeff, and apologies I can't come back on video because my laptop is doing an update here, but we're gonna pivot because that's what we do.
You sound great.
Yeah, so thank you. I've been working on my radio voice. So love the question because, obviously there's a lot of implications to that, how all of us are transforming into technology organizations. How can we better leverage data? And, whether it's with connected devices and smartphones and wearables, bringing that whole ecosystem together. Frankly, it's been the very impetus for why Microsoft has continued to sub-verticalize in the healthcare space. In July of last year, we formed our health solutions business, which supports a lot of the customers that are on here today in the med device and med tech space. How can we help be a repository for data, provide opportunities to break down data silos, provide connected data. And then this not only enhances the effectiveness of the organization, but also the patient experiences or the providers that they support. So Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare, which in essence is the extensibility of our platform and how tools are being built in our platform, has data at the very center of it. Consumers today are looking for more human-centered and convenient and cost-effective health and wellness experiences. And Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare, in essence, will deliver those experiences because of the insights that are available and ultimately leads to better care. The thing that I find really intriguing about Cloud for Healthcare is that ability to work directly with our customers and partners and customers as partners to build on that platform and create commercialized experiences. It's an unparalleled ability to be able to do that in the marketplace. And so that's what I think is super intriguing about Cloud for Healthcare. Software as a medical device. So medical devices on their own that are fast becoming an inherent part of consumers' lives in terms of both diagnosis and monitoring and the treatment process. This is a wave that we are seeing that will continue to gain momentum. So, what I'm seeing, Jeff, Microsoft, along with partners like YASH, have the ability to bring in services to help customers embrace software as a medical device, really optimize that experience for everyone involved, ensure optimum patient engagement, and provider engagement, and there's a lot of opportunity with digital technologies that help catalyze the change.
A very thorough answer. Thank you very much for that perspective, Carson. We appreciate that, and I agree with you. It is exciting to see these things and how it's advancing through technology, the whole healthcare industry. We want to turn it over for our next question. We're gonna go to Yatin with this. Yatin, what would you say are the critical components for software as a medical device from a technology standpoint? And specifically, can SaMD use the agile methodology for development?
Sure, Jeff. Thanks for the question, and very excited to be part of this interesting conversation. So from a SaMD perspective, if we were to look at it in terms of a minimum functionality, then you would expect that the SaMD, as Rajan explained and defined it so eloquently, first is its ability to perform diagnosis, and then based on the diagnosis, prescribe some treatment, and then finally inform our patients about their health conditions. So to piggyback on the diabetes management example that Rajan talked about, one of the things that the platform or the SaMD solution would need to do is to perform diagnosis based on vitals such as blood glucose and blood pressure, and then reach out to external systems and then prescribe a diet and insulin intake, as he called out, and then finally inform the patient. So that is hopefully a very simple example and a very simple mapping to the minimum functionality from a SaMD standpoint. And now if we were to generalize this to accommodate any use case, then some of the important and critical components that would be required, and I always have a diagram in my head and I do a left to right. So let's start from data collection and ingestion, and just imagine a diagram running from the left to the right. What you would need to do is be able to collect data, ingest data. And again, Rajan mentioned, talked about several sources. Could be you need to reach out into laboratories, medical devices, could also be imaging devices as a specialty, and then services such as HealthKit or Google Fit and so on. That's one huge dimension in terms of diversity. And then the type of data itself could be lab results, could be medical images, symptoms, activity data from your Fitbit, patient demographics, clinical notes, some sort of diagnosis, allergies, immunization dates, and so on. So whole bunch of diverse types of data, also in different formats. So if you were to just bucket it, you would find that there are 4 distinct capabilities that you need just from an ingestion standpoint alone. Being able to get source biometric data, typically some sort of IoT enabled or Bluetooth enabled connectivity. Then structured inputs like clinical records, from some HL7 or CCDA formats, medical imaging information, typically in DICOM format and so on. And then all of this, once it enters into your platform, you would want to manage and persist that data, keeping all PHI, GDPR, HIPAA, and so on, all those compliances and regulations in mind. And that then means that the platform should be able to support some ways to encrypt or substitute or hash, do some date shift, anomalize the data. So that's how the platform also needs to be able to manage data. And one final aspect to that is you should be then able to search and query and do that in real time, anonymize in case you want to share the data with some other parties. And once this data is available, the AI and the machine learning modules that will do the heavy lifting in order for the platform to be able to do the diagnosis and then the prescription. And finally, some mechanism of customer experience and notification. And finally, all of this in keeping in mind industry standards. The FHIR is a very emerging standard since about 2014. And so when you look at the totality, these are just some of the critical components. I could go on, Jeff, honestly, but I'll just sort of conclude by saying the good news is that the Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare platform that Carson just mentioned has all of these capabilities baked in. So with that, hopefully I've been able to address the critical components that are required and the fact that the Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare platform has all these capabilities built in.
So if you want to get started in this particular area of software as a medical device, the Microsoft Healthcare Cloud is a great place for you to get started.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Fantastic. Thanks for that explanation, Yatin. I thought that was very helpful. Appreciate it. So now we're going to go to Sean. Sean, how you doing? Can you please tell us, good to hear. Can you please tell us what role you see as a technology leader in accelerating, client journeys towards software as a medical device product development? So how do technology leaders accelerate that process?
Yeah, it's funny that I'm on camera today because maybe you saw that I got a little bit excited when Yatin was talking, how it's almost scary how aligned we are in basically the capabilities that we need to develop in order to enable, great partners like YASH to go and build these software as medical devices. So I like to think of it from left to right as well. Essentially, from that ingestion piece, we are building solutions and products in order to enable partners like YASH to be able to ingest that data. So at that point, we have services such as going from HL7V2 and convert that into the industry standard data models such as FHIR, right? So going from even CDISC and CCDA and HL7V2 and getting into that persistence layer with FHIR. And having that service action and go into basically something where we can go into that real-time data analytics piece in a service such as Synapse for ETL. And then even converting non-standard data types, which we see all the time with medical device companies, is like they might have it in a CSV file. So how do we map that CSV file over to FHIR and that unified data model that we can build those software medical devices off of? And then even we thought about that IoT piece, that medical device piece, and we knew that we needed to basically make it as easy as possible to ingest that data, provision those devices. And so we have the MedTech connector, the IoT hub, and Central in order to be able to do that. And then eventually, once you're actually going to develop any of those ML models off the back of these huge data sets that you've now built and have essentially a data lake that you can source from. We have Azure Machine Learning where you can build and develop and collaborate on those medical device software as a medical device algorithms.
Okay. Fantastic. That's a great answer. So lots of different capabilities within the Microsoft Healthcare Cloud and a great ecosystem of partners like YASH that are out there to be able to deliver solutions on top of that platform. Wonderful. So let's go back over to Rajan to talk a little bit about compliance. Rajan, can you kind of talk to us at a high level on how you see regional regulatory and compliance bodies governing the software as a medical device ecosystem and then the development ecosystem associated with that? That's a very important part of this if you want them to be able to go to production.
Yeah. So usually medical device companies struggle with a wide variety of regulations in different parts of the world. But fortunately, this time you actually have an international medical device regulators forum, which is kind of coordinating the thinking at a higher level. So whether it is the FDA in the US or the European MDR regulations, they are all working in a little bit of a coordinated fashion, right? So the fundamental principle is let's say, for example, you can see how fast-paced some of the apps are coming out in the market, right? Like, so maybe there is an e-commerce app which is giving out updates on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, right? It will be a shame for FDA or any of these regulatory bodies to be the bottleneck and be the hindrance in releasing the next version of a solution into the market. So that is the key intent of the regulatory bodies. So they do not want to be a bottleneck, but at the same time, they do not want to cause anything hazardous in the market. So fundamentally, if there is something life-threatening, right, or if it is something dealing with a critical or a serious condition, they want you to go through the regular process, even if it is an SaMD. But otherwise, if it is for informing management of a clinical condition, or if it is a non-serious condition, FDA and all the other regulatory bodies are trying to step away from the strictly regulated process, and they are actually taking a look at what is your development cycle? What is your product development cycle? So they want to make sure you have a solid quality management system, which is tied rigidly to a feedback mechanism from the market. So let's say there is some kind of an adverse event or an issue happening in the market. You do need to report about it to the FDA, right? But at the same time, as soon as you know about it, what kind of corrective action are you taking in the software to make sure something like that doesn't happen again, right? So they want to make sure that cycle is established. And once they see your development cycle is satisfactory, they are actually letting you, in some sense, loose into the market, right? With the trust that you will do the right thing when you are facing issues, right? So in that sense, I would say the different regional bodies may have some nuances, but at a high level, this is the gist of what the regulators are expecting and driving in the market. Hope that answers your question, Jeff.
Yeah, I think so. I think there are probably a lot of details for each individual, kind of organization based on where they are and what they're trying to do. But it's nice to know that that entity exists and they're seeing those challenges and are trying to address them. So that's good stuff. Thanks very much. Cool. So turning it back over to Yatin and going back to that whole kind of getting started and getting off on the right foot within this particular new technology development. Yeah, how does YASH, as a technology service provider company, support customers in terms of developing software as a medical device solutions?
Sure. Thanks, Jeff, for the question. Again, the services that we provide would kind of mirror the journey through which customers are already in within the SaMD cycle. But I'll just assume, there is a greenfield development that is on the table. And so perhaps the first step would then be to help work very closely with the customer in defining what the product would look like. And we would do that in terms of a product roadmap, helping put together the business roadmap and the IT roadmap as part of the overall roadmap and the journey. And we typically use design thinking principles and methods to help crystallize what the product would look like and the definition of the product in terms of either an MVP and then multiple iterations or releases that follow the MVP. So that's more from the functional side. And then from the technology side, we also think in terms of minimum viable capability. So minimum viable product from a functional side, and then MVC, which is minimum viable capability. And then we, knowing that at some stage the customer would want to adopt a platform such as the Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare, this is where we also bring in expertise from Carson and to some extent from Sean's team, which is on the technology side, because then they're bringing in the expertise in terms of the MVC. And then folks like Carson and Rajan from our side, who are the industry experts, they are bringing in the thought process from an MVP perspective. So that's that's how we start. And at the end of that exercise, we typically have also mini project charters, some budgeting exercise that we do as well. And then we move on to the next phase where the focus now shifts more to architecture and design. And this is a highly iterative process, a lot of focus on fail fast. Sean talked about the expansiveness of the Microsoft platform, from the left to right. And there are several options to choose from. So we typically start with a reference architecture, map that reference architecture to a reference implementation using all the critical components that I talked about earlier, which are powered based on the Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare. And then we also do rapid proof of concepts. There is also a certain degree of education, for lack of a better term, and I would wish that the audience bears with my use of that term, because there may be some degree of unfamiliarity with what the platform has to offer, and hence I use that term. So learning and getting to know how the different critical components of the platform work, how they would fit into the both the MVP and the MVC objectives that have been set forth. And then once the design and the architecture is pretty much formed up, we would get into what would be the pilot phase. And then that's where the blueprint of the architecture is proven out. We do that as a stepping stone to what would then become the MVP. So the pilot is used to prove out all the technology, bring it to some level of scale. And then once the scale is achieved, we would then start developing the MVP. And then from there on, depending on the commercial success and the commercial acceptance from the marketplace, we would then start to get into the multiple iterations. So, and through all of this, you would need teams that are simultaneously focused on development, support, all the way from cloud infrastructure to integration, and then the whole functional and domain expertise also being a central and front and center part of the overall process. So I could go on, but hopefully I've painted some of the key steps in the overall roadmap and the journey, and what are some of the services that YASH provides, but working very closely with our counterparts and peers from Microsoft, and then obviously from the customer side as well. So a Trioca expertise, both from a functional and technical, coming in from YASH, Microsoft, and the customer.
Fantastic. Great answer. So yeah, and if people want more details on how to start, these two folks here, as well as me, would be great people for you guys to reach out to if you had additional questions or wanted to dig in a little bit deeper. So thanks very much for that answer, and thanks to all the different panelists for providing your perspective and insight on this. I think it's been very helpful. That pretty much concludes the at least the initial agenda that we wanted to cover within this particular webinar. We hope everybody's found this information to be valuable, and we do want to encourage people to ask some questions. We have a couple of questions already within the chat window here. This first one that I see here is directed to Carson in terms of how does Microsoft look at collaborating with partners and service vendors like YASH to further capitalize on the SaMD opportunity. I think we touched on that a little bit, but I think that Vivek is kind of looking for specifically the Microsoft perspective in terms of how do they look at collaborating with partners and service vendors to capitalize on this opportunity and create avenues for partnerships. It's kind of a complex question, Carson. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I love the question. Many of you on the call know that we have a very robust partner ecosystem, in excess of 60,000 partners that we work with, and many of them have, very strong niche use cases. And again, we talked earlier about how we further evolved our health practice and why we're continuing to learn and research and invest in research in this space. And it's super important for us not only to have strong partners that have the experience and the wherewithal to build on our platform in meaningful ways and to take things to market, and to ingest the data that is critical to these processes, but also to liaise with customers, and customers become partners in essence, because we have the ability to learn in these situations, work directly with our customers in the med device or med tech space, and then create solutions that ultimately enhance the patient experience. So partners can be and are a critical component of that. We also have a lot of resources that our customers are entitled to as part of their Microsoft investment, like our technology centers. We leverage our Microsoft technology centers, of which there are 15 in the United States and 50 globally. And we leverage these. We go in together with the customers, with partners, and that is where we can ideate and ultimately go fully to pilot with these types of solutions. So Vivek, great question. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, thanks. And that's a really good point, especially those technology centers. There's significant investment in those, and they're spread out strategically. So if you want to know where the one is nearest you, please let us know, and we'll help you out with that. It looks like our next question is for Rajan. What can be the starting point for a med tech firm to begin the SaMD journey? And what best practices, I think in a nutshell, is probably a lot of them, but can you provide around this
Sure.
this journey? So
the first step is analyzing the intent of the medical device company, right? The intent and whether is it really an unmet clinical need in the market, right? Like unlike the development of, any medical condition, you'll see tons of apps in the Play Store or other places, right? But is it really clinically valid? Because you're going to go through such a, you can say, a regulated process and actually be involved in the clinical decision making, you need to make sure it is a validated need of the market. So that is the first step. Subsequent to that, different geographies will have different requirements, right? Like the framework is still the same, but you need to, the second step is to map out your regulatory plan according to the geographies in which you want to tackle. So that would be the second step. And beyond that, I think you should have a solid quality management system and get going, right? So and this process has been significantly simplified by FDA in the US. So much better than the earlier days of.
It's easier than ever to get started. It's complex. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. The next question is for Sean. Sean, how do you think Azure ML will enable more use cases for software as a medical device? Have any thoughts on that?
So as a data scientist, essentially you're facing multiple issues or challenges, right? Which is firstly is you're having this huge explosion in data variety. So that's where that fire service comes in, and we have a connection from the fire service directly into Azure ML essentially, which means as a data scientist you can build those models inside notebooks, train your model on the cloud, which means you don't need that powerful of a laptop or a computer. All of the compute is happening inside the cloud. That training model is then deployed again in the cloud, and then has a serverless architecture, which means
Sean, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, something funky happened there for a second. I got removed.
oh, I got
There
muted.
you are. We got you back now.
Gotcha. Just to recap then a little bit is essentially the Azure machine learning platform enables you to develop those algorithms, deploy those algorithms, and allow them to scale. So even when you get an increase in traffic that you didn't expect, or as that medical device is being used more frequently, we're able to scale with you. And so it enables basically you as a customer to be able to build and deploy all these algorithms over time and have a better medical device that works better. I apologize, I'm getting a bit of an echo, so hope you can hear me. So.
Yeah, you sounded good to us. Sorry you're having that echo, but it sounded okay, at least from where I'm sitting. So thanks for that answer, Sean. Appreciate it. Hopefully everybody got that and there wasn't because I got accidentally knocked out of the meeting, but I'm back in and ready to keep going. Hopefully you got that answer from Sean and we can follow up if you didn't. Our next question is to Yatin. Yatin, what are the challenges a med tech partner can uncover in creation for SaMD applications? Any recommendations for best practices there?
So right off the bat, I think going with a proven platform or a platform that has all the regulatory compliance already addressed is perhaps the best way to make sure that you don't get into some of the pitfalls and the challenges. And I'm not saying this because we are in this discussion with Microsoft, but a lot of the compliances that you would expect, and Rajan talked about the challenges of compliances in multiple regions. So how do you have a single product? And if you plan to launch that product in multiple platforms, how do you then have a single platform that is able to manage the launches and the multiple product variants across all these geographies? So cloud for healthcare has an excellent head start in terms of giving you the regulatory compliance that you would need. That's number one. Number two, also keep a watch on standards. The FHIR standard and the entire API for healthcare that is part of the cloud for healthcare, Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare, that has a lot of capabilities built in. So simple things like search and query across multiple sources, across big data sets, and being able to do that almost in real time. You wouldn't want to go and build that on your own. So the API for healthcare has that capability. I talked about anonymization earlier. I talked about encrypting and crypto hash and various other techniques for masking and hiding data in order to be PHI compliant. All of those are built in and baked into the API for healthcare. And then finally, with FHIR having and supporting some of the more recent API capabilities like REST and JSON, and sorry for getting a little technical, but those kind of capabilities are also built into those APIs. So my recommendation would be have a careful balance between build versus buy. Look for these options that are available, which will cut down on your, not just on your development cycle, but it will also streamline your entire regulation, the regulation process. So that would be my recommendation, to look for these kind of platforms and then look for custom or build as a option unless the platform doesn't support it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that very thorough answer. I think that covered it. But again, if you want more details and you want to go into it, we are happy to have follow-up conversations with any and all of you about this subject and go into a little bit more detail. So with that being said, We have no more questions in the chat window. You can give another second. Are there any other questions? If you want to, come off mute or just write them in there, we would be happy to answer them right now. Just give it a second to see if anybody has any other additional questions. Doesn't look like it. So, okay. Well, that's our show for today, ladies and gentlemen, and we very much appreciate your time. I know I learned a lot. Hopefully, you all did as well, and you guys have some new ideas, and as it relates back to this particular technology and moving forward within your individual organizations. Carson, I'm going to turn it back over to you to bring us home.
Thank you so much, Jeff and YASH team, for joining us. Sean as well. And for our audience, thanks for being a part of this discussion today. We look forward to continuing the dialogue. Please feel free to reach out, engage your account teams here at Microsoft. We would love to explore together where we can optimize the software as a medical device opportunity that exists for all of us. So thank you. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to get a copy of the recording. It will be sent out momentarily. I'd say probably within the next 24 hours as well. And if you have any ideas or suggestions for future sessions, please let me know, and we will be sure to incorporate that. We are wrapping up our fiscal year here in the next 6 weeks, so definitely planning a full lineup of value-added technical briefings for the new fiscal year. So looking forward to continuing the discussions, and thanks for your time today. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Carson. Thanks for the opportunity, and we really appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thanks all for your time.
Thank you all.